I should really stop sitting like this because I'm getting mad pins and needles. Hello and welcome to Sound Like. It's been a while. I took some time off, but I've back and I've brought gifts. I've brought How to Sound Like Reapers today. So as always, we're going to go from start to finish throughout the song, analysing each particular part: verse, choruses, pre-choruses, solos, riffs, extra sneaky little sinister bits in riffs. The entire song, how I play it, the sounds I get from my board, and apply those sounds to the song. But this video is extra, a little bit special because this is the first video, depends on when I edit and release these, but first Sound Like with my new Boss ES8 pedal. This won't be a video on how I've programmed my ES8. If you want to see a video on how I've programmed my ES8 and how I've programmed some particular songs, I'm more than happy to do that. Already I've slightly changed up how I queue up sounds and patches for songs that I actually already have covered in Sound Like. So for example, I used the prime distortion for a riff, I've now switched over to the big muff for the same riff because I've now got the flexibility to add in more pedals within more patches, presets and so on. They're minor changes. If you want me to go through those or kind of do those in a separate video, do let me know again. I'd be happy to go through that. I do want to do a dedicated video on my ES8, maybe not going through patch by patch because that would just be tedious, but the kind of ideas I've got from this, it's a pretty specialist piece of kit, so it would definitely deserve its own video. But we are here today to talk about Reapers, so let's dive into it. Before we do all that, this is the guitar that we're using. I seem to use this more often than not. My Manson MA2 Evo with sustainer, pretty old school, pickup's great and sustain is really good for it. And because this is Reapers, you need a guitar that can do behind the nut scratches. So a Telecaster will do, Strat will do, but I don't really like Strats that much. But Mansons, weirdly enough, are perfect for Muse songs. So before we get into Pedalcam, like, share, comment and subscribe. It really helps to push this channel out to get to even more people. And let's start the video. Right, over on Pedalcam for Reapers, I'm using my generic patch 1, which in running order has prime, overdrive, distortion, big muff, fuzz factory, blues with a bit of delay, blues clean, and 8 does nothing. And 7 is my special button, which should turn on something. What does it do? It turns off the delay. Of course it does, because they're clean with standard. Right, so for Reapers, I use, I think, just 4 patches, which is prime, overdrive distortion, big muff, and blues drive, because Fuzz Factory doesn't really work at all, and this is a big, powerful, mental song, so a clean channel has no business being in Reapers. So, prime distortion, we get this sort of sound. Huge, that's the big riff stuff with the chorus. The overdrive distortion is some pre-chorusy sound. Which is great. Big muff for a big nice riff. And the blues driver is used for just the verse. A really good range of sounds used for this, kind of going from the one extreme, which is the blues, up to the kind of prime distortion sound. Really good opportunity for dynamic range and kind of getting a sense of how to build your sound on this when you come to play it. So let's dive into the song. So let's start at the beginning as the song does, so let's follow suit. That this whole thing, you want to have your big kind of out there kind of distortion, so I'm using my prime distortion, which is the big kind of full right out there kind of sound, and then we start the tapping bit, which is just So that's the intro done. For the distortion that I use for it, the prime distortion is used for the intro on kind of both kind of tapping bits and also the chorus, but we'll get into kind of that bit and how it goes. But because I only have a limited amount of distortions available, out of the ones I'm using, the ones I've got, the prime distortion offers the right sound for both the intro and the chorus. It might be the same for the things for the pedals that you've got at your disposal, unless you've got a really particular sound that you really like for one and then a separate one for the other. Go for it. But something that sounds great for one, that's to you, that sounds great, it will probably work for the other part as well. It's just a bit of advice, but that's what I do just to kind of make life a bit easier for that. So that's the intro done. Now we're going to smash straight into the verse. Okay, so we're now going to cover the verse of the song. This now accounts for both times that the verse appears, and it's just very simple. You go over to I'm going over to my Blues Driver pedal, so I'd suggest you go over to your kind of like a light, kind of a bited crunch sound. My blues pedal is kind of turned all the way up in terms of gain, only because the gain doesn't really kind of pump out a huge amount, so it's kind of cranked to max as much as it can. It works just as I need it to, but ideally I'd like it to be able to go further, but that's just me. And then it sounds like this. It's very simple and it's very straightforward. It's just those 3 chords, very easy. They're not a difficult chords at all. The only kind of, the third one actually is just, I play is just an octave on A. The other 2 are pretty straightforward. Those 2 appear in uprising for the chorus, for those who recognise those chords. In terms of the sound that you want to get for this one, it really should be something that's completely different from the rest of the distortion sounds that appear in this song. It should be kind of bited and crunch because it's a very fast-paced, very kind of aggressive song, so it needs to be that some of the clean sound would be, awful. Just not got the clarity, it's got the clarity, but it hasn't got the drive or the power to kind of even register as something that's appropriate for it. So something like this kind of crunchy sound with a lot of level behind it would work really fine. A lot of a good amount of mid-tone in there as well. Maybe not so much kind of low end because it just gets really kind of overly boxy. You want something that's really going to cut through right at kind of the 1k to 500 hertz kind of range. That's, I think, is perfect for this. It's great. I think you should really experiment with a lot of dynamic range, as I've said in kind of these videos before, to go from one extreme to the other. So when you come to those big sounds, your reference point from this kind of like more kind of smaller level really helps to kind of really elevate that. I have spoken to a lot of guitarists or seen a lot of guitarists who just have this one admittedly kind of good distortion sound. It's great, but that's all they've got. It's the only weapon that they've got, and so to speak. And it just loses its appeal after quite a relatively short amount of time, because it's just the same sound over and over again. Yes, you can change your playing style to kind of like more kind of like try and shape that sound, but at the end of the day, you've still got a lot of gain going into that. I mean, even little things like rolling off the gain on the guitar really, really helps, but a lot of people I've seen don't do that. Is a really kind of really rolled off, but then and so much range from this pedal that's got admittedly it's got quite a good range in and of itself. When you take the gain all the way down, it's quite a decent boost pedal with a bit of dirt on it. So really think about having something that's really tiny in comparison to your big sound to really exaggerate those huge tones. As I've said before, I really like having a lot of distortion sounds to play within any one given song. If not distortion, it's adding in some modulation or pitch shifting or kind of a lower octave harmonies, and it really, really works for a lot of Muse songs and a lot of other bands out there. The exception for that really for me is Rage Against the Machine, where I'd kind of just go with my overdrive distortion for 99 or 95, 80% of the sounds. Anything kind of that's a bit rolled back, I then do go over to my blues pedal, but that's cranked all the way up. But because those songs are kind of interesting guitar wise because there's some interesting delay work going on there. There's obviously some whammy stuff or some kind of guitar sound. There's some sounds that you can get from the guitar itself, like nut scratches or just harmonics, and then kind of layering those up with delays and stuff really helps as well. But just a kind of a raw powerful song like Reapers, I would really suggest having lots of tones and lots of sounds and kind of colours to work with. So that's why I'd suggest you kind of go for this relatively small crunch box. Pre-chorus. Okay, so now we're at the pre-chorus, and it's a very short section, and I switch over to my overdrive distortion that's kind of leaning more towards the distortion side of things for kind of a step up from the verse sound from the blues pedal, but it's a step below what the prime distortion is. Again, it helps kind of link those two sounds together and helps to kind of get more of this dynamic range out. The overdrive distortion is a bit more boxy, so it helps it kind of cut through in the mids, whereas opposed to the prime distortion is a bit more kind of full fat, if you will, if you kind of get the analogy, and it should sound like this. And then you go over to the chorus. It's a very quick, blink and you'll miss it kind of part in the song. I mean, there is an argument to just go straight over to your chorus sound, but because it's a clear kind of pre-chorus sound and it's an opportunity to kind of step up tonally and kind of really kind of get the pedal board to kind of really kind of flex a bit, you know, with what you've got going on. If you've got an additional sound to play with, literally, from your chorus sound and your verse sound, if you've got something extra in there that isn't like the big muff, which is for kind of a big riff, this one's kind of a pokey bit, I would really strongly suggest doing it. If your options are limited, then you've only got like 1-2 sounds to work with, or maybe 3 that don't worry up for this, fine, but I would really suggest if you've got the ability to kind of have a third distortion at this point like this, really do go for it. It really kind of helps to kind of tighten the sound up to then go into the kind of the really big chorus. So that's kind of it, and it works for both pre-choruses. That's the trick to that. So let's do the full chorus now. Right, so the chorus is very simple. It's in terms of musically, the guitar and the bass are playing the exact same stuff. You can add a bit of flair to it, like I do. Add a tiny bit of kind of an extra bit of notage here and there, or improvise a little bit, but it's essentially very straightforward, which is great for a kind of a big, powerful distortion like the prime distortion. It's the same sort of sound that I use for the riff for Stockholm Syndrome, for Dead Star, the riff for like Newborn, the kind of a really big, right, straight down the middle, big kind of distortion sound, and it should sound like this. It's pretty simple and kind of fairly straightforward in terms of what it is. It's just out there. There's really nothing to it. Musically, those sections are really, really easy to play. It's all about feel, and it's all about the kind of the power that this part has. There's no secret to it. It's just to have something that's distortion, just crank it all the way up. Maybe not feed too much of the high end into it, otherwise it might get a bit like wasp in the jar sort of thing, but something that mirrors up and matches quite nicely with the bass, so the bass kind of worries about all the kind of low end you just want, and that's going to kind of like cut through the mids kind of fairly decently. That's kind of it. So we've kind of the moment, by the time of the chorus, we've explored 3 kind of key different kind of distortion sounds from the verse sound, which is kind of a pretty tight boxy sort of thing, overdrive distortion for the pre-chorus that's kind of starting to widen open, and then by the chorus we've really done it. We've really kind of expanded more into kind of the frequency range that's a bit fatter and wider. So if we switch over to the blues pedal, for example, for doing that same sort of thing, great for the verse because you're strumming full chords in there, and that kind of compensates for the lack of low end grit and the kind of apparent loss of kind of a lot of gain in there. The overdrive distortion, it would do okay for the chorus. it's a little bit too boxy for what I really want this to be, a kind of like a down the line sort of cut right to your brain and make this a kind of a great riff. And that's what I would really suggest that you do. You really focus on having a huge distortion sound. And that's kind of the trick, that's the secret. So this works for all the choruses that appear, all three of them, and it's the same sort of sound that I use for the solo and the kind of the riff build up for the solos. So let's look into the solo now. That's the solo for Reapers. So it's a very interesting song sonically, helped largely for me by the whammy whammy changes that are going on in there. Without it, it would be a bit kind of dull, or it just wouldn't work very well. The whammies kind of help to use it as as an extension of the instrument. In this, it's not just on one setting and then you just upping it by an octave or two or down, whatever. It does help to kind of really add to the sound that's really going on in there. So the whammy does make this solo, and for me it makes this song really stand out. The chorus makes it a kind of really kind of badass type of song. It's kind of like a slow groove in there. It's really good, but the solo just kind of takes it that little step further. I know that this isn't really going to be very accessible to a lot of people, because for controlling a whammy you need the whammy pedal itself, a MIDI cable, an audio interface, a DAW that can send MIDI messages and be able to have the knowledge to send and program MIDI messages. It's not something that everyone can do. Obviously there's kind of financial implications for these sorts of things, but I mean you can sort of do this kind of solo on the sly and just choose one pitch shift, like say one octave up, and get sort of close. Changes in this might be a bit too fast for your foot to change in real time, so where you could just be a bit more creative with how you're using it. But if you've got all the equipment available, then you can take the time to program all these changes, hear what's kind of going on in there. For me, it's one of my favourite solos from them, because it's just so out there. Tonally, you should have your biggest distortion on there to kind of really get the higher resonances and the kind of the nut scratch that kind of goes on in there to kind of really get all the kind of harmonics in there that's going on. The overdrive distortion is too dull for to really pick out all those transients in there, so that would be my suggestion to you. Use your biggest, fattest, not really the fattest because that's like a big muffy, but your kind of most crisp and a very riff friendly sound. For me, that's my prime distortion, and that's the solo done. Then we go into another chorus. You can either keep on the prime distortion, or for my argument, it's the prime distortion. You can keep on your chorus sound, or you can switch over to your kind of more kind of friendlier pre-chorus sound, which is in the overdrive distortion for that. In entirely dealer's choice on that. It's I do kind of much prefer to go over to the overdrive distortion for that, because it isn't as pinpoint and direct, but because it offers a bit more mid-frequency content, it makes it a little bit more boxy and helps that kind of bit to really kind of stand out. Again, you take a step down from your big distortion sound down a bit to kind of have this tonal shift, so you can really hear that the sound has changed, it's evolved again, and then you can then throw that into the 6th gear when you come to do the outro riff, which we will cover now. I should really stop sitting like this because I'm getting mad pins and needles. Okay, so we have reached the final section of this song, which is just the outro riff. Now, people who have heard Reapers before know this kind of really comes in 2 parts. We have the riff that's out there, and then the kind of the insidious delay sound. I keep on the same distortion setting for this whole time, but for that kind of the insidiousy bit, I just whack on delay, with normally quite a lot of feedback in there and quite a high level, just so it kind of really builds this kind of wall of noise. Not really so, I don't mean in terms of the playing, I kind of aim to get the right note, but because it's just this kind of like wall of sound, it's just kind of like looping into itself. It's more for the feel that I kind of really go for with that. I may just start using the sustainer pickup to just kind of get more of these kind of like higher resonances going on. It's kind of really whatever you want, but the delay makes this kind of section key. The riff is very straightforward, it just goes up the octave. Does that, the guitar and the bass are doing the exact same thing that the whole time for that part, and then we just click on the delay and we just get that's kind of it. The trick is just adding that delay in for that kind of really kind of mental bit, that mad bit for it. Really kind of helps play up to it. Keeping the same type of distortion helps kind of the power going. To have drop to change over to say the overdrive distortion and then click on the delay would have a huge tonal shift. Like for example, it would kind of strip out the power from it. A lot of the low end would come out and more mids would come in. Too jarring for really what it is. The delay really is key for that section. If you've got a delay pedal, you can use the next section. I would suggest that you really do use it. It helps add an extra kind of dimension to this song, an extra dimension to your playing. We can really make you think, what are you really gonna change? What can you kind of add in? Yet your own flick that or kind of flavour for this song really in there. It gives you lots of opportunity. Whether you want to play up to the kind of the power that's going on in there, or if you want to take it back and do something completely different, it's entirely up to you. But I would suggest that you just keep on a big kind of fat distortion like a big muff pedal, and then hit some delay for that, and then come out and do the riff. Entirely up to you. But that's the end of that song. That's the end of the video. So let's just debrief if this has made any sense. This is just how I play Reapers, and let's see in the outro. So that was Reapers in its entirety from start to finish, all the sounds that I'm using and how I play it. So I hope you enjoyed that one. As I kind of said in the video, this feels a bit rusty to me because it's been a while since I've made one of these. It was summer time, so I went away and I saw family, and I kind of deliberately didn't make any videos in the kind of lead up to that, but coming back has been, you know, a really fun experience, and making this video, which I've wanted to do for a while, because it's a kind of really interesting song. So let me know what you thought about this video down in the comments. It'd be really interesting to see what you thought of it, if it made sense. If it didn't make sense, I'd be happy to give it another go, but with your guidance on how you'd like to see this done. I know that in the beginning of these videos, I kind of go through all of my all of the sounds that I get, and then just play the kind of the parts of the riff, which may give some people just everything that they need to then just go away and do it. But if you really value the breakdown sections in this, where I talk about each particular part, and where I particularly go into what a certain sound sounds like, and then how it marries up to the song, so like we have multiple different distortions in this, how it works. If you prefer that, or if you want me to change any of that, you know, just let me know. These videos are made to help you, and if these videos aren't helping you but they can, let's work on it together. Until then, like, share, subscribe, comment as well. It really helps to kind of know what you guys think. Feedback is always welcome. Until next time, stay safe, take care, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.